he was around that company long enough and around Triple H long enough to know how it works. And he's not, listen, man, he's never going back to AEW. He knows this is it. So, he's going to be on his best behavior until he realizes it's the end of his road. So, nah, man, he's not going to upset that apple cart, man.
Let's talk about CM Punk. CM Punk was recently interviewed by Peter Rosenberg, and he opened up about whether he was happy during his time in AEW. He said, "No, I feel like I wasted some matches on some people for sure, but that is what it is. Some people understand the business and some don't. Everyone here understands the business." Now, Vince, was that a PR move of CM Punk saying that I'm in a good space right now with the WWE? This isn't the post-media scrum where I'm chopping on pastries and drinking whatever, sparkling water or sparkling juice, whatever he was drinking, or soda. And do you think the WWE has made sure that there's some parameters within interviews as far as him talking about AEW?
Nah, I don't. I think he was around that company long enough and around Triple H long enough to know how it works. And he's not, listen, man, he's never going back to AEW. He knows this is it. So, he's going to be on his best behavior until he realizes it's the end of his road. So, nah, man, he's not going to upset that apple cart, man.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So, yeah, it definitely seems like he's being sure not to shoot about how he really feels. And he's not going to go back into that those scrum days of just shooting. He's going to be on his best behavior, be sure that he's not going to say too much about AEW. So
You think you know all the wrestling stories? There's more you haven't heard yet. Join us on Backstage Pass.
Yeah, EC3, what do you think about CM Punk's very high road, professional answer to those questions about AEW?
I think it's a moot point at this point. I think when a guy like that bears all, like he did in that one interview, and I forget who it was with, Ariel, maybe. That's it.
Ariel Hawani. Yeah,
Ariel, excuse me. When he went pretty in depth with that interview, it's kind of like, you have all of my thoughts now. They are confirmed. They are on paper. They are in print. They have been vocalized. They've been verbalized. Like, I don't need to revisit this. So I think kind of that little throwaway question, like he didn't delve into it, but he's kind of already discussed it. And I think one of the quotes was like about where he mentioned, this is not a serious business. And then his quote, like, and he's got a great point. I mean, he's working with Drew, Cody, Triple H, top WWE guys that get the business. And there is a difference between people that get it and don't. And he's working with people that get it, and he gets it. So I don't think there's any parameters. I just think he doesn't want to revisit it, that he'll off the cuff remind, maybe I wasted some matches, and everyone here gets the business, and that's all he needs to say. So I don't think there's any restrictions.
Very interesting. By the way, Donald Trump is still following Vince McMahon.
Oh, wow. That's a win. That's a W for him.
Impeached.
There you go. Yep.
Matt Gates, where you at?
What's that?
Matt Gates, where you at?
Oh, yeah. Well, he withdrew.
Follow me on Blue Sky.
There you go. That's interesting, EC3, because it makes me think about, like, if the Tony Khan relationship didn't sour, it seems like the basis of the relationship souring was because of the just high school fraternity, just cliquish boys type of backstage atmosphere that CM Punk walked into. And although his relationship with Tony as a boss was fair, he just couldn't deal with the really Bush League, immature, low EQ type of atmosphere that he was dealing with. From a wrestling standpoint, from a backstage perspective, take us into like CM Punk's mind of how a bad locker room could really affect drastically your relationship with the boss.
I think, I don't even know if it's affecting the boss or just the collective as a whole, but I think getting the business, understanding what the purpose of the business is, I think is one of the paramount things that makes the business work. And it sounds like I'm just saying the business ad nauseum, but it's kind of like every match, what is the business of the match? Every segment, what is the business of the segment? And forward-thinking, cultivated minds that are looking forward to producing results, earning ticket sales, earning viewership, earning merchandise money, building brands, whatever, like see a long-term sort of plan as opposed to condensing to what is become sort of a niche, sort of small, minute group who controls the vocal minority controlling so much. And I hope that made sense because it sounds like word vomit. But the locker room is very important. If people are conducive to understanding the business, they know that it may not always be about me, but if it's going to be about me in the future, or if it's going to be successful, I have to play this part and this role as a collective. So even though maybe I'm CM Punk, I'm a top guy, I'm coming back to AEW, I'm not in the main event yet, but I'm working a young up-and-comer where giving him a good match and a good showing is going to be very conducive to the business. But this young up-and-comer, not used to working with a high-level professional who has such a stature and such a brand, where it shouldn't be as competitive as this individual thinks it should be, just because they're sharing the ring in the same company, because we're working together. Does that make sense? So I think CM Punk sort of, the right mind would understand that a 10-minute match with this person and they get one or two near falls builds them up, while that person who doesn't understand the business, because there's very little business education in there, or no one's listening to producers and agents who have done the business, thinks that it has to be a 50-50 indie spot fest shit show where they have to hit all their things and hit 15 false finishes, or it's not going to be a good match. Where the good match comes from the great story where the young upstart was pretty competitive with a living, breathing legend, but he's not there yet. Maybe that was a good example.
Yeah. Along those lines, based on what he just said, Vince, I'm gonna tag you in as far as what EC3 just said too. Do you think that a lot of the business is starting to hurt because of that philosophy of those so much of this new breed of talent wanting those spot shows, wanting that dopamine kick from the fan reaction versus businessman, the veterans wanting more of the long haul, and you have the big dopamine kick in the end? It's like, do you give me a bunch of different spurts of dopamine, and not really enjoy the payoff, or do you wait until the payoff and then we all get to eat? You know what I mean? So and that's where I think, as far as one of the biggest issues right now in the pro wrestling business is as a whole. What do you think about that?
I think it's a lack of understanding of the absolute roots and foundation of the wrestling business. Yeah. It's a lack of understanding, because, I'm all for, evolving things, Chris, but even though you evolve, the foundation needs to remain the same. And there were very simplistic, black and white rules as they pertain to professional wrestling. The basics, the fundamentals. Now, I think you need to keep those fundamentals in play, and you can evolve from there. I think you have 80% of today's wrestlers that don't understand the fundamentals and that foundation at all. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know why things were done that way. They just don't know, and they never took the time to educate themselves.
I'll chime in on that, to be fair, too, because what I've noticed coaching younger talents now is when it's explained to them, they start to understand it. And even if they don't understand it, if they trust you and they see it through to completion, it clicks for them. So I do think there's been a lapse in talent and producing, cluing the young guys in on the hows and the whys and why this makes sense. It has kind of just become a free fall or a free for all. Whereas, like, I'm taking it upon myself to hopefully coach people up. But I agree, Vince has the best insight of wrestling, and the internet might light me on fire for saying it, but he's right. Based on the fundamentals and this like formulation, you can evolve into everything you've ever wanted. Everything you want out of wrestling, you can have. Every move, every high spot, every flip, every dive, every ladder bump, every stage bump, every set of body on fire, every tombstone pile driver into the steel while you're a sitting reigning mayor of Knoxville County. You can have everything you want in wrestling if it's built within the foundation and the fundamentals, and the evolution makes sense.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Very, yep, I agree 100%. Yeah. When I was a fitness trainer for a very national, national company, we would have these conventions, and the big wigs from Florida would come up here in Ohio. And I'll never forget, they would have like speeches and conferences and stuff. And I'll never forget what one person said, one of the vice presidents of the company. He said, it's better to master than tweak than to tweak than master. And I'll never forget that. This was about 15 years ago, and I'll never forget that. And that is something that's been embedded in me for the past 15 years at least. And I told that to my son, in a different way, like polish first. I mean, like complete first and then polish. You know what I mean? Like I'll let him know that when it comes to, because he's starting to kind of get perfectionist in him and wanting to do A. You know, he's got A through D, and he's making sure that A and B are perfect. I'm like, no, you complete them first, and then you polish afterwards. I do a lot of public speaking too, in different places and things like that. It's like, man, you got to complete that thing first. You got to learn to master it. You got to take a hold of it first, and then you polish it along the way. If you keep polishing A and B so much and trying to make A and B your own thing, you're missing the point, right? Because when you turn this in, you can't say, yeah, A and B is so good. Well, you're still going to get an F because you haven't finished what the assignment was. And I think a lot of these wrestlers aren't really mastering the foundation of pro wrestling. They're trying to tweak it along the way so much that they're missing it. That they're missing so much of the really, really good foundation of pro wrestling is that carnival atmosphere, good guys, bad guys, that those Carl Jungian archetypes when it comes to hero and villain. Like all those things are so important, and that's the foundation. That's why we watch pro wrestling, man, and they're missing it so much, especially in AEW when you're having people saying, I don't want to listen to the veterans. Dude, that's a thing now. You know what I mean? So that's messing the product up even more.
I just can't fathom that mindset. And I'm not a crazy old timer screaming at a cloud. Like, I look for feedback from older people as much as possible. Not so much to do exactly as they say, but to see where their mentality is and then create my own based on it. Yeah. And like, just listening to people talk, like, you don't have to agree with what everyone says, but if you just hear them out, it makes you conducive to thinking outside the box and within what you know and making it work.
Yep.
Collaboration is the key to creative.
Boom. We went all philosophical and psychological in this segment, and I love every single bit of it. I love it. every single bit of it, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm going to send you what I wrote about the hero's journey in pro wrestling. I'm going to base a class on it. Look at that.
I think EC3 needs to come out with a book. I'm just saying that dome that you have full of Robert Greenisms and a whole bunch of other isms.
Plagiarized all these great people in my own stupid words. Creative collaboration.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.